Louisiana Attorney General Jeff Landry back again. Mr. Jeff, thank you for taking time, sir.
Good morning.
Okay, I think I kind of understand Judge Morvant's ruling yesterday, but I know you'll explain to me. Okay, walk me through this one. The judge ruled yesterday that I could just say good morning, Jeff, and let you go. The judge
I can't wait
yesterday.
to hear it. Robert, I got to hear. If you think you understood what he did, I can't wait to hear it. I really do. This call is just worth hearing you do say that.
The judge ruled yesterday that the House petition overturning the governor's emergency mandate was, well, it just didn't count because he said that it applied to an emergency mandate that had expired. You wrote that the judge was rewriting state law. How did those two relate to you, or don't they?
Well, of course, look, first of all, he started with that, right? But it's important for everyone listening to understand what happened in court yesterday because, the problem that we're having with our courts is that they have always been, and I do respect the courts, have been beyond reproach and criticism because judges are supposed to just call balls and strikes. But more and more, these judges are not doing that. They're writing the law, and they're bending the law to their particular will. And then, of course, when they come under extreme criticism, they get real ornery about it. Look, the judge yesterday, before the hearing, last week, we put before the judge what's called a TRO, a temporary restraining order, asking the judge to enjoin the governor from issuing a new proclamation, which he was due to do on November the 6th. The judge struck that and said, well, I'll hear the preliminary order on the 12th with everything else. Well, by that time, that becomes moot. He knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted the governor's order to go in place, and he bent the law to get the outcome that he wanted. And then after he went through that litany of saying that the whole issue was moot, he then wanted to rule on the constitutionality, and in some perverted, absurd way, he said that the legislature may not, when delegating powers to the government, put provisions in there that claw back those powers unless it's the same way that they enact the law. Now, I can find no case law to that effect. But I can tell you the good news. The good news is that if people want an end to this, according to the judge, they just need to call their state senator and tell them to do exactly what the House did. And if they do that, they bring me the petition, I guess the court's going to be out of excuses.
If what you say is correct, if your sense that Judge Morvant was predisposed to rule against you going into yesterday, you knew then going in it was kind of a long shot at best?
No, look, I think it's important, Robert, that we get some clarity. The only thing I can do is appreciate the fact that the judge postured it so it goes straight to the state Supreme Court. What's disappointing, though, is that the judge bent and hurted the case to get the outcome he wanted. If you look, there were about 300 people, I think, that watched the hearing. The judge, expressed his dissatisfaction and his disappointment with allowing people to watch him. I thought that was problematic in and of itself. I mean, think about that. Why shouldn't the public have access to their courtroom? But yeah, he basically sent the court. I mean, look, it's going to be before the Supreme Court. We're going to try to get it to the court as fast as possible. The sad part is this affects these rulings and the governor's actions are affecting people's lives. Suicide rates are up. I think there were like 3 suicides in dorms at LSU in Baton Rouge over the last couple of weeks. All right, we've got opioid overdoses on the increase, depression, people losing businesses, and yet no one in the government seems to care.
Jeff, let me ask you this. There are those who say that this was just done on the House side, the Senate had nothing to do with it, and that we're stepping in uncharted waters when we let the House determine the law of the land. Your answer to that?
Yeah, that's not true. That's the twisted. Those are excuses from those who want to do nothing. Aaron, let me walk you through this. Two different legislatures, a House and a Senate, on two different occasions in 1993 and 2003, passed a law that granted the governor emergency powers. Okay, they reenacted two different sections of the Emergency Powers Act. They granted the governor special powers. In other words, things that he normally could not do because it would be an emergency. They then instituted what's called a revocation, a revoke, because if the legislature is going to give something, constitutionally they have to have the ability to take it back. Both houses in 1993 and 2003 agreed to allow one house to be able to revoke the governor's power. Now, there's nothing unconstitutional about that. That's completely absurd. It happens all the time in other particular cases where one committee has the ability to prevent an agency regulation from going into effect. And by the way, regulations have the full force and effect of law as well. And so this is absurd. The legislature has the ability to grant, to give, and to take as they so choose. The legislature could have said, you know what? We're going to let Aaron determine when the governor has overstepped his boundaries, and the power comes back to them. Nothing unconstitutional about that.
Mr. Jeff, moving forward, what's the argument, what's the case you're going to make in the appeal that you didn't make, that wasn't made yesterday, that would be more convincing to the next judge?
The good news is we go to the Supreme Court where it's going to be heard in front of 7 justices instead of one district judge in Baton Rouge, which I'd like to get to that too. Don't let me forget how a district judge in Baton Rouge affects things that go on in Shreveport each and every day, and that's problematic. But the argument we're going to make is basically the same, Robert. In fact, the Supreme Court is going to be trapped on its own precedent because it has case after case after case that says what the judge did was wrong. And that's the disappointing thing. The judge had all of the case law in front. But you see, the judge wanted the Supreme Court to hear it. If the judge would have ruled that the law would have been constitutional, the governor would have had to take a writ before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court could have denied the writ. But because he ruled it unconstitutional, the Supreme Court is mandated to take this up. And so that, we're going to go and make the same particular argument. But if you don't mind, let me get back to this continued instances of judges in Baton Rouge that are elected only by people in Baton Rouge.
But
that
this is a Republican judge. This is a Republican judge, correct?
Oh, it's yeah. It's a Republican judge. But think about this, Aaron. All of the cases that the state has to hear go before the 19th JDC. You don't get to vote for those judges. People in Monroe don't get to vote for those judges. People in Houma, Thibodeau, Lake Charles, but yet every day they rule on cases that affect citizens from around the state.
So back to my original point, Mr. Jeff, you kind of knew going in that this was really phase one of the process?
No, look, we believed it was constitutional. When we drew this judge, we figured, we said, man, we've got a pretty good judge. He's pretty, he upholds the rule of law. We thought that we would go through there and have a good hearing. What we didn't have was anything but a very fair hearing. In fact, he bemoaned the women attorneys that we had on the case while granting a lot of latitude to the governor's men. And we found out in last week, Robert, I realized in a conference with the judge and the parties that we were dealing with a hostile judge. But before that, no. I mean, the law is this is basic governmental structure. This is not rocket science. This is not complex law. It's not obscure. It's real easy. It's black letter law, And then, I guess the weight of, the pandemic may be falling on our shoulders. But again, if we're not a nation of laws, then the republic falls. I mean, that's why we are where we are. It's why every day you hear your listeners complain about the problems and the erosions of government, and nobody's listening. You can't get anything done because we make a rule and then somebody bends it to their particular will, and it's done in the courts. And so, that's where we are. We're going to go to court. We're going to make that argument before the Supreme Court, and then, the Supreme Court will have their say, and that I guess we'll have what the new rule is, if that is the case, or they'll strike the judge's order down.
Jeff, he kind of chastised you for sending out the Zoom link, and the Zoom court hearing kind of got out of hand yesterday. Describe how that went and what went wrong.
Well, nothing went wrong in my opinion, Aaron. I mean, I don't know why the courts are open to the public. They're supposed to be open to the public. They don't allow you to record court proceedings. They don't allow you to put cameras in courtrooms, because that was always the decorum of the particular court. But now in the COVID, we have these Zooms. So we shared it. We've had a lot of people concerned about the actions that the governor has continued to take. And I think that the people of this state deserve a right to watch their judges in action. He took offense to that. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
So what's the time frame on the Supreme Court? When will that case be made?
Well, we're going to try to get it to the court as quickly as possible, Robert. We're going to expedite it. We would hope maybe the court. We don't know if the court's going to actually take up oral arguments or do everything by briefs. We probably have a good indication of what that looks like next week. Our folks are working right now. They've been working 24 hours a day. I got to tell you, my hat's off. Our staff are just some great bunch of lawyers and paralegals and secretaries that are just working extremely hard to move this case forward.
Attorney General Jeff Landry, appreciate your time as always, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.